All right, we're back. And so is our carburetor for the Cadillac. And pardon me while I frantically look for something to open the box with. I believe we're dealing with some, it's got those copper staples in it. Yeah, we'll just pull that. There we go, that'll work. So I sent this off to National Carburetors down in Florida, specifically Jacksonville, Florida. And clearly it's packed quite well, as I would have hoped. And let's get this guy out of here and see what we're dealing with. Careful. Come on out of there. All right. There we go. Easy. Man, oh man, oh man. Look at that. Will you look at that? Will you look at that? If you recall, a couple of years ago when I rebuilt this carburetor, just did a standard rebuild on it, and I used water weld for the sealant. It worked for a while. I think it did a pretty good job, but I really don't know whether or not it will do as good a job as the really proper epoxy goes. So, and a lot of companies will use what they call Marine Tex, which is actually the best. I'm not sure what they use, to be honest. I'm not sure which brand of epoxy. I haven't asked them. So those appear to be brand new idle mixture screws. Yeah, they have a black color to them, so those look new. Maybe the blackness is due to chemical corrosion removal. I'm not sure. And we have a new gasket there that goes down to the onto the engine. Well, if looks can tell you how a carburetor is going to perform, then this one should do wonderfully. 704-1230, and they put a rebuild sticker on there of their own. I'm not sure why they did that. RRND4331. That must be their version of the same carburetor. All right, I can't wait, man. Let's get this thing on the car. I'll be right back. All right, let's get the old car mounted up here. Gently. Yeah, that's gently. It'll be fine. How about some bolts? Let's do that. All right, come on, gasket. There we go. Pivot around. There we go. So for whatever reason, there were no flat washers on the bolts going to the air horn. I don't know why, and I'll be honest with you, I can't even recall if there were supposed to be flat washers. When I disassembled the carburetor the first time, there were no flat washers, and the head of the bolts had dug into the air horn a little bit. So, that's neither here nor there though. Anyway, I put a nice grade 8 flat washer on underneath the head of that bolt to even out the loading there on the old carburetor. All right, that's fine. I'm not going to tighten those yet because I'll just probably have to remove it anyway because I screwed something up. Let's see. Let's get the brake vacuum line connected. Yeah, I know. Shouldn't really need a clamp of any kind on a vacuum line, but these are just the spring-loaded things, I think these are the ones that it came with from the factory, so if I'm not mistaken. Now this smaller one is a lot tighter, so not really a need to put a clamp on that one. That one goes down to the vacuum modulator on the transmission. So if you're a Cadillac guy watching this, You know, the vacuum modulator on the Mercedes over there is very, very adjustable. You can get in there and just tweak that thing and fine tune it and all kinds of stuff. I don't think the one on these GM transmissions is adjustable. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they are. Let me go ahead and get these two small bolts into the divorced choke. And of course I drop the bolt down into the little cubby hole next to the intake. And now I have to get a magnet. Putting these bolts in here on the divorced choke. Pretty dark in here. I had some nice lights that I was making videos with on, you know, for YouTube, but they're really meant for the people that, you know, have YouTube channels where they sit in a desk, you know, and put the camera right in front of them, and they sit there and jaw at you for like half an hour. Blah, 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 and they take all the silence out between their words, you know. Anyway, those lights are great for that, but they're horrible for the shop, so I ended up breaking them eventually. I need to buy some heavy-duty ones, so if anybody has any recommendations for, you know, some lights in a workshop for YouTube, then put the comment down below. I could use a little help. I'm not going to hook up the fuel line just yet. I'm going to have to tweak that a little bit, I think. And hopefully we won't break it. This fuel line, a couple of years ago, I put in, came in from Classic Tube. So let me get over on the other side. I'm going to shut the camera off for a minute, get on the other side and connect up the emissions evaporative canister vacuum line. Goes to that bigger line on the bottom, and then the distributor goes right there. This line is steel, so I'm not sure. Easy, easy. That's actually pretty good. Need a wrench, need a wrench, need a wrench. All right, well, they say, or at least I don't think there is, a commercially available tool to hold the 1-inch nut on the Quadrajet carburetor while you tighten the fuel inlet. There probably is one. I don't know where it is, don't know what it's called, and so figured I'll just go ahead and make one. I got a cheap Harbor Freight tool set here. I robbed the 1-inch socket and cut it down to size. Very careful, I might add, over the course of the last 3 or 4 hours. Up next, I'm going to do a test fit on the car, and then I'm going to weld a handle onto it. All right, pardon my my workbench is just off the hook, man. Anyway, yep, there's our tool. I got it a little crooked. Whatever, who cares? But that's my concept. I saw one on Summit Racing. It was basically just an open-end wrench, 1 inch long, and it was about this thin, you know, and the head of it was pretty thin. I didn't want to wait, so I just went ahead, and I probably could have just modified a 1-inch wrench, but I don't know. I kind of thought this was a good idea, so we're going to see how well this works. We'll put this in our secret stash of crazy wrenches. All right, there you have it. All done. I've got these bolts down. You know, put your hand on the end of the socket wrench and just kind of ease it in there. You know, I don't know how many foot-pounds that is, but it's not a whole lot, so you don't need a whole lot. I haven't touched the mixture screws. I'm assuming they're set in an appropriate fashion from the rebuilder. I got all my vacuum lines connected up. There's a distributor. Got this long one that goes back here to the full intake manifold vacuum that goes to the thermal switch on the front of the head. I'm just reviewing this stuff. Got my accelerator cable connected up right there. Sorry for the poor lighting. Got the fuel line squared away. That took some doing. I loosened the bolt on the water pump because there's a bracket. The fuel line goes through a bracket on the water pump. So anyway, got that all tightened up, and I was able to get that thing lined up to get it started. Got the choke bolts tightened down, and I believe that's about it. I think it's time to fire the old girl up. So let me get situated and see if this thing will crank. All right, got a little fresh gasoline here. Let's give her just a tickle. That's all she needs. All right, let's see what we're gonna do here. All right, let me see. I think maybe I knocked it off high idle. Let me set it back on high idle, see what that'll do. All right, clearly the high idle is set quite low. However, the choke is on. That's a bit weird, but you know what? We got some tuning to do, which actually is kind of boring, and I dread it a little bit. And I think maybe I'm going to do it off camera, because you guys have seen me do it before. I'm going to hook up a vacuum gauge and tachometer, get the high idle just right, and make sure the vacuum is just right, and all that kind of stuff. And really what I want to do is take it on a test drive. All right, let's see what's making all the noise. What is that? That's interesting. What is that thing? What in the world is that? Where did that come from? Let's see if we can figure this out. Let's see. Everything's okay over there. Yeah, it looks good too. Transmission pan sure is pretty. Let's see if we can find the source of the problem here. Holy crap. Yep, that was it. You know, I'm thinking this muffler's not good. What do you guys think? Yeah, that doesn't look quite right. I'm not sure that's supposed to be exploded like that. Last night when I was working on this thing, the loudest explosion of any backfire ever in my days occurred. I nearly had a heart attack. It was so loud. It was unbelievable. It sounds like a monster truck now. So there you go. Let's see. I gotta get a new muffler, clearly. All right, so that's the center out, and this is end is on the side. So now I'm wondering, let's see, I'm assuming that pipe had a whoop-de-doo in it like that before this whole, yeah, that's a factory bend. I was trying to determine if the explosion bent the pipe, but no, that's not the case. This may cause me some issues when I replace this muffler, because if I cut it off right there, that's right in a bend. That's going to complicate things. Well, no matter. Let's go ahead and get over to O'Reilly and pick up a new muffler, and, well, let's get started. And let's get this done before we get our carburetor woes out of the way. All right, the sun is setting, and I've been messing with this on and off all day long, and this new muffler is a little smaller than the one I pulled out of here, the exploded one, that is. Not sure what brand the old one was. It was installed by an exhaust shop. I got this one from O'Reilly, just a basic Walker, regular old, plain old muffler, and got her welded up to the original pipe. This is the original pipe from 71, believe it or not. I think, let's see, what's left of 71 is from here, basically the rest of it, I think. Yeah, including the manifolds. So, except for this bit right here. I had to fix that a while back. So I redid the mount back here. This hanger mount here is original to the car. I decided to keep it. I just took some 1/8 bar stock and made a hanger. There was a U-bolt on here, but with this new muffler, it didn't line up real well, so I just dispensed with it and just fashioned that. It's a little gnarly, yeah, but that sucker ain't coming off, I guarantee you that. Back here, this guy here was a bit too short, so I added about that much to it to get it all the way through the hanger there, welded that on. This the curvature in the pipe right here is such that if you get this clamp over too far, it just starts to waller around and it turns into a mess. So I just made this part longer so I could grab some nice round bits of pipe. Anyway, exhaust is back in service. Let's get this old Cadillac back down on the ground, because this is not an exhaust video. Oh my goodness. It's a carburetor video. Can we just not get back to the carburetor? Can we do that? Well, apparently we're gonna have to cut this video off, because We've run into some pretty serious roadblocks here, and well, let me show you what we got. So here we go. All right, so I ended up pulling the Quadrajet, and when I removed it from the engine, I immediately put my glasses on, raised the carburetor into the air, and I looked at the two well plugs beneath the primary bowl, and they were leaking gasoline. Back over here to the engine. Let's see if I can get some indirect light there. I'm not sure if you can see. You see that wetness between the secondaries? See how it's darker in the middle than it is on the sides? This entire gasket is nearly soaked with gasoline. Furthermore, there's a lot of gasoline down in the intake manifold. I think we found out why the muffler exploded, unfortunately. This gasket is saturated. Yeah. So that's pretty unfortunate. Whew. All right, so I finished up the exhaust work clearly, and we got the car back onto the ground. And I was very careful in starting this thing back up. I made sure I disconnected all the vacuum advance stuff. I hooked up my vacuum gauge. Got the vacuum gauge connected there. I had my handy dandy Penske little test set connected up. Also had my timing light connected up. Had everything squared away. Man, I was going to really get after it and do some tuning, you know what I'm saying? This was after I had already repaired a fuel leak, which I found. Where is the culprit? Okay, so sorry I'm skipping around, but I've run into a lot of issues here. So as you know, a couple of years ago, I bought a pre-bent stainless steel fuel hardline from Classic Tube. And this is the end that I pulled off, because when I fired this thing up the first time, I was messing around a little bit and I noticed a fuel leak coming from around this fitting right here. I couldn't feel it anywhere else at the time anyway, but this was the leak that I honed in on. My eyeballs went straight to this one, although the other one existed as well. I just didn't know it at the time. So as opposed to removing this entire hard line, so I figured this flare was probably at fault, and sure enough, you probably can't see it in the camera, but there is a flat spot in the flare right there, and you just can't fix that on the car. This is stainless steel, and it is hard as a daggum diamond, okay? You can't be flaring stainless steel on an engine. Just don't even try it. So I decided, well, you know what? I'm going to cut it off, and I went and got myself a 5/16 fuel line from the parts house. It came with a proper flare nut on there. And I just used some basic rubber fuel line, a couple of clamps, and I cut the stainless steel line off back here, and I spliced that in there, and that worked perfectly. This leak from here was completely repaired, and I was happy with it. However, after the car was running for just a very short while, I began to notice more and more fuel down below the fuel inlet, and my heart sank and I became more and more disappointed. So I was like, okay. I shut her down, I went inside and ate some lunch, and I calmed down. And I removed the carburetor and found what I just showed you. The two primary wells that are supposed to be plugged, which they were, but albeit poorly, they're leaking. So that carburetor is going back to National Carburetors in Jacksonville, Florida for a redo. So I think I figured out how the muffler exploded. I ran this thing for a little while yesterday. So here's what I did. I made a couple of mistakes. First off, I was messing around and I tried to crank the car with the PCV line on the base of the carburetor disconnected. I had just forgotten to connect it, right? So humongous vacuum leak, clearly. And I crank, you know. So that's weird. It must not be, you know, the fuel system must need a little priming, you know. So I tried it again. I didn't prime the carburetor again, but I just, you know, I tried to crank it again and again and again. And I figured, well, the fuel would get there eventually, no big deal. And man, when it did, oh my gosh. The loudest backfire I have ever experienced in all of my born days. I thought a stick of dynamite, I thought the fuel tank had exploded. It was unbelievable, just unbelievable. So clearly, that carburetor was dumping fuel down into the intake manifold by the bucket loads, and I was cranking on this thing, and I was just shooting gasoline back there into the muffler, and then it eventually fired. And that gasoline in that muffler ignited, and it exploded. And I think I put a picture of this on the Facebook page already. But that's what we got right there. Did you know that gasoline was a powerful substance? I'm here to tell you, it is. So I think we solved that mystery. The exploded muffler is due to a faulty Quadrajet rebuild. That's just what it is, a faulty Quadrajet rebuild. Okay, fine. Some things happen. I'm just going to send it back. Let's see, what else was wrong with the carburetor? Not really wrong. The high idle was off. I had to adjust that and get it up to about, I don't know, about 1,400. It was set, the high idle was set to like 1,000. It's a little low, you know. So I needed to set it a little higher, but that's not a huge deal. The mixture screws came with like 3.5 turns out, which is about where I had them set. I think they must have wrote that down. And then, you know, when they put them back in there, because I checked it, you know, I wound them all the way in and I brought them 2.5 turns out. And then I fired the motor up and I was going to do some vacuum testing. I was going to go through my whole tuning procedure, and then I noticed that catastrophic fuel leak coming out of the, I think those well plugs probably just started leaking more and more profusely here just recently, today. And that's the reason why I noticed the fuel leak so readily. I'm glad I did. I'm glad I pulled that carburetor back out of the vehicle. One more observation. After I fired this thing up and I was about to start the tuning process, actually I did start it. I was setting the idle, looking at the vacuum. I noticed that the engine was running horribly. I mean, it was just, I was like, man, this thing's really off. I kept tweaking it and I'm thinking it was going to get better. That carburetor was dumping fuel down in that motor and it just wouldn't run. It just wouldn't run right. And I was like, holy cow. And then I noticed the leak. Anyway, I'm not going to go down that road again. But that's where we are, and that's where we're going to be. So Tuesday morning after Memorial Day, this carburetor is going to go back into that box, which I haven't thrown away, thankfully. And it's going to go back to National Carburetors, and I think I might overnight it with a nice little nasty gram to boot. So I'm really disappointed. I was really wanting to get this car back on the road, but it's not going to happen. So sorry about the fail video. I guess we're going to call this part 1. How about that? Let's just do that. All right, folks, that's all for now. I appreciate you guys stopping by the channel. I really do. And don't forget to like and subscribe. It would help my channel tremendously. You guys have a good one. And remember that some problems are a lot more difficult than you can possibly know. And you just have to stick with it. When you get frustrated, you settle down, take baby steps, make a list, go rest, get something to eat, take a break, let your mind gel, you know what I'm saying? And then just come back to it. And then the solutions will start to manifest themselves. So I guess that would be my word of advice for today. So you guys have a good one, and stay tuned for the next video on this old Cadillac, where we maybe finally get our carburetor woes resolved.